Hi there, and welcome to Sports Scene on WLCS TV. I'm Tim Alcorn. Each week we'll be bringing you this program, talking to different athletic members of the Lorain community, coaches, so on and so forth, and we'll talk to them about their individual programs and what it means to the city of Lorain. We figured it'd be best to start off this new show with the man in charge, Houston Love. He's the athletic director of Lorain City Schools. Houston, welcome to Sports Scene.
Well, thank you, Tim.
I guess the most appropriate question to start things off, what's the job definition of athletic director of Lorain City Schools? What are your responsibilities?
Well, Tim, how much time do you have? The responsibility is a pretty big one, really. Coaches in the city, and that includes 3 high schools and 5 junior highs, and that's a large responsibility. All buying for the system comes through my office. I have to approve all buying. The junior high principals are in charge of actually purchasing the items for their school, but I have to monitor the account that the money comes out of. So the stuff that they buy at the junior high does come through my office, and I have to prove that. So just tons and tons of paperwork. If we talked about how many days I would actually be in some type of meeting, athletic council meeting, a meeting with someone from the public, a meeting with a coach over some type of situation, I would say out of maybe 18 to 20 days of actual work during the week, I spend 18, or let's say out of 20 days, I spend about 18 of those days in a meeting of some sort. So that doesn't leave a lot of time to do the basic things you need to do in your job, like visit coaches, visit athletic contests, and those kinds of things. So it is a very large, complex job, and I would say I spend about 12 to 14 hours a day in doing the job of athletic director. If there are any kind of concerns on the part of a coach, female or male coach, for whatever reason, then I might have to do some investigation on whatever the problem is and then come up with a solution.
When you talk to other athletic directors, they're in charge of one individual school for the most part. Where do you find the time to handle all these different schools?
Well, I have another me hidden in the closet, really, and I pull it out every now and then and turn on the switch and have it go do some of the work. But really, it's a challenging job, and I knew it was challenging when I decided to become an athletic director, and I'm very pleased in doing this job, and I'd like to do it, whatever I do, I'd like to do it to the best of my ability, so if it takes 14 hours, that's what I'll give to it.
Houston, and looking back at the fall sports season, we're just about winding it down now.
Right.
Any particular accomplishments from any of the teams that really stand out?
Well, I think we'd have to start with Thurm Riddle. Thurm Riddle has a 20-0 season, and I think that's fantastic. He's done just a tremendous job down through the years, and he tells me this is his last year. We're going to really, really be sad when he leaves. But what a way to go. If you're going to go out, let's go out on top. And one of his star players, Jessica Williams, has really had a tremendous year, along with 2 or 3 other members of that team. Kyle Lathwell is another one that has done extremely well. And when you start mentioning names, you're going to leave somebody out, so I hope the students that watch this program will excuse Mr. Love for leaving a few names out. But that team has done just a tremendous job, and they were Erie Shore Conference champs. I think that's the credit to the coaching staff there.
Coach, I'm so used to interviewing coaches. Houston.
I was a coach at one time, so that's fine, Tim.
Obviously, a situation that's on the mind of many sports fans in the city of Lorain. An unfortunate situation. The Steelman football program had to forfeit a couple of wins. Just to clarify things and get it out of the way, per se, what really happened and what ramifications are there from it?
Well, first of all, let me say that it was kind of sad that this had to happen. And we hired Terry King to do the job over there, and he is definitely doing a wonderful job at Lorain High School. He started out with a program that wasn't doing very well and brought it up to, he still hasn't won a lot of ball games, but the growth in the kids is what I looked at, and I think he's done a marvelous job. So I wanted to preface everything that I say by saying that he's done a nice job, and the kids deserve all the praise and credit in the world for the job that they're doing. They just won this past weekend. The situation that presented itself, we had a student transfer from Admiral King High School, and we also had some movement at Lorain High School as far as the administration was concerned. Barb Evans, the 12-month assistant principal, moved to Longfellow as the head principal over there, and the 10-month assistant moved up to her position. So there was some movement. And during this time, the information was supposedly they tried to get information from Admiral King. And the information that Lorain High said they received was that the kid was eligible. And now there's some controversy over this issue, so I'm not sure what happened there, but supposedly information on the last sticker that's placed on the kid's permanent record was what they looked at. As the story goes, as Lorain tells the story, they looked at that last sticker and determined the student was eligible. And Lorain High said that they took that as gospel, signed the eligibility forms, and sent them to state. Now, what really should happen, you should eyeball the information, declare the student eligible, and then send it to state. So there might have been a clerical error on the part of Lorain High School, and I'm not sure, the information that was gathered from from Admiral King was only for the entire year. The last 6 weeks grade is really what you should look at for eligibility for the next grading period. So they really should have been looking at that. So there were some mistakes made along the way, and they were honest mistakes, and I think the mistakes occurred because of the transition of staff more so than a mistake made on the part of Admiral King. I don't want to say King made the mistake because that wasn't really proven, and I want to clear that.
To your credit, I have to say that, I don't know if most people are aware of the fact, you in fact reported it to the state, to the Ohio High School Athletic Association, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, Paul Sink and I talked about the situation, and we thought that the mistake did happen. Let's go ahead and report it to the state and report exactly what did happen, and we just have to take the lumps. If they denied the appeal, or if they said that we really could not count the games as wins, then we'd have to accept whatever the state gave us.
And basically those bylaws are etched in stone. Once you reported it, you knew the forfeitures were going to come.
That is true.
But as you mentioned, to Terry King's credit, his kids bounced right back, and they played a whale of a ball game against Southview the following Saturday night. So you have to give credit to him and his staff.
That's right. Tim, the students know that they won those ball games. No matter what the record says 20 years from now, those kids actually won those ball games, and they know that they did it, and I don't think that's going to hold them back. I don't think that's going to really minimize their enthusiasm and the intensity that they play the game with.
Houston, about a sneak peek ahead to the winter sports. Everybody knows that Larry Stark and Dale Reichert are coaches that are well entrenched at Southview and Lorain High. We've got a new coach over at Admiral King, and Mel Coleman. Talk a little bit about Mel and let the viewers know what you saw in Mel that you decided to bring him up to Admiral King.
Right. We had started our interview process, and we looked at some very quality candidates, and I think the Lorain people and the people in the community really would have been, they would have been excited about the people we had in mind. But I got this name from Earl Haberfield of Mel Coleman. He said, Mel is interested in the job, and maybe you want to, talk to Mel. And I said, well, why not? And as luck would have it, Mel called me about a day after I talked to Earl. And he said he was interested in the job, and I noticed the confidence level this guy had. I mean, it was up here when I talked to him. And he said, I'm the man, in this low voice, he said, I'm the man that you want for your sports there at Admiral King. He said, I can get the job done for you. And he said, when do I start? And I started laughing. I said, this guy is really bold to make those kinds of statements. And then we got serious, and I said, tell me a little bit about your credentials. Tell me where you've been and what you've been doing and what kind of records you've had in the past year. So we got to talking, and then we started talking philosophy. And I know I coached with Mitch Gillum, so I knew his philosophy pretty well, and I know what it takes to win from being around coaches like Bo Schembechler and Dale Rickenbaugh and Elyria, some of the kinds of things that they did. So I started talking to him about his philosophy. I said, tell me about your defensive philosophy. Tell me about your offensive philosophy. What do you like to do offensively? What do you like to do defensively? We went really deep into it. Tell me how you set up your drills for defense. Do you know anything about the run and jump defense? Do you know who started it? And, you know, we started dropping names, and every question, he was right on the money. Do you substitute a lot of guys? Yes. Why do you substitute these kids, and how do you substitute these kids? And, you know, he started explaining those kinds of things, and it just, you know, blended with my philosophy, Mitch Gillum's philosophy, and the kind of things that we like to do. We like to play an up-tempo type game, pressure defense, motion offense, use a lot of players, you know, try to wear the other team down. In other words, the actor always wins, so you try to dictate on offense and dictate on defense. And then talking to Mel Coleman, he did all of those things, and that excited me.
Houston, I also understand that, I didn't mean to interrupt you, that
okay.
Mitch Gillum wholeheartedly endorsed Mel Coleman. He knew him from camps, and when you brought up the name to Mitch, he basically said, go for it, he's your guy.
Right. After talking to Earl, I said, well, I want to see what Mitch Gillum knows about Mel Coleman. So I gave Mitch a call, and I said, Mitch, tell me a little bit about Mel Coleman. What do you know about this guy? And he became very excited. He said, hey, Mel and I have worked about 5 or 6 years working the OU basketball camp together. And he said, I know him quite well. He just said, if you want a guy that can really keep this program going, he said, Mel is your man. And, you know, he said, Mel is your man.
Nice
he said,
recommendation.
Right. He said, you know, do you want me to give Mel a call to see if he's really serious in his bid for the job there at Admiral King? And I said, yes, why don't you give him a call and see if he's really serious about coming down here to Lorain. And I said, I have another question. I want to know why he's leaving, you know, his present situation. That's a very important question to ask, which I did ask him, and I was pleased with the answer. But Mitch said he would call. He did so. And he said, well, Mel said he's very, very interested. And I asked him a few key questions, and I think, you know, he might want to give it a try.
Houston, in a situation like that, is it a gut instinct? You talked about the first time you talked to him on the phone, his confidence level, the way he talked basketball. Do you get a gut instinct when you hang up your phone and you say, but this could be the guy?
I think you really do, but then you still have to be careful, because anytime you bring someone in from the outside, you can never know everything about that person, and it's somewhat of a gamble. But I think that when you choose a coach, you have to he has to understand the game. He has to have a philosophy that he's going to play a lot of people, and that he can relate to kids, and he can motivate kids. And there's some basics that goes into winning, and we talked about those things, and he was right on target. So that kept my interest level high, because if he couldn't score well on that part of the little quiz that I gave him, then I don't think I would have considered him, because I had a lot of the coaches over here that were just excellent candidates for the job.
Houston, we have to get used to calling people something else aside from coach. I've been calling him coach for so long.
No problem.
Houston, after Mel Coleman was hired, there was a published report that while Mel was coming in, this would be the last year for Dale Reichert. Is that a fact? Has he indicated to you this will be it for Dale?
Yes, he's indicated. Dale and Carl Hartman both, who are very, very good friends, have indicated to me that they will be leaving after this season. They're going to retire, and hopefully, maybe we can talk him into staying around just a little longer, make my job just a little bit easier. They've done a real nice job over there, and we really hate to lose them, but they did indicate that they were considering, and that doesn't mean that they're definitely going to leave.
But the process may start all over again.
And if it starts all over, I think going through the process with Mel, we have some people waiting in the wings that are very qualified, that are still interested in coming, because we told them at the time of the interview that if we don't choose you, the Lorain High job might be coming open, so I'm going to keep your file in case we need to call you. And we talked to the coach at Columbus, DeSales High School, who was very interested in the job. I think his name was Basutti. We had talked to a coach from Columbus, Lyndon McKinley, who was very interested. Now, as far as whether he would want to make the transition from Columbus to Lorain High School, I'm not sure. But there were others. There's a coach over at Garfield Heights in Cleveland. He was very interested in the position. And as a matter of fact, he had maybe 20 different coaches in the area call for him and indicated how good he was and how much how well he had done, and turned the program around at Garfield Heights, and how he'd gone to clinics and made sure that he was up on the latest trends. And he was able to talk X and O's with me, and I was very, very impressed with him. So we have some coaches out there that are still interested. I had a college coach from Florida called. He's coaching at a junior college, and he has a 6'10" coming back, and I think his record was something like about 16, and I think he lost maybe 4 or 5 games last year. So he's very interested in getting back to the high school level. He's tired of recruiting. So there are people waiting in the wings right now if Dale decides to go out. But Dale is doing a nice job. I'd like to keep him around for a few more years. But we'll work on that. But I think it was nice going through that experience with hiring Mel, and I'm very pleased with the coach at this point.
Houston, before we went on the air, we mentioned the fact that, in a more generic sense, you've started what's known as a coach's library in the Lorain area. Why don't you talk a little bit about that and expound on that?
Okay. That was an idea that I had when I came in to this job, to have a resource for the coaches that are in the sport. Of course, when we hire coaches, we try to hire the best. That's primary. You want to hire the best coaches that are out there. And then once they get in, you want to give them an opportunity to grow. You can grow in different ways. You can grow by going to clinics. You can grow by going to various kinds of workshops. We can put on a workshop and bring in great speakers. We can order books and we can order tapes. And I chose to order some books and tapes for those coaches. We have tapes in our library by, just big name coaches around the country. And we got input from those coaches as to what videotapes we should get. And we have some very nice ones, and we like to add to that library this year. Now, the endowment fund has allowed us to do that. We had a grant through the library from the endowment fund that allowed us to purchase about $500 worth of tapes to start out with.
All sports? Football, basketball, volleyball?
Right, all sports. So we plan to continue along those lines.
What are qualifications that you're looking for in coaches that you haven't really excelled in? Let's say if it was a coach such as volleyball or a girls' sport. Is it a little bit different looking for a coach in that area?
In a girls' sport?
Or a sport that you yourself, of course, you were a great athlete.
I think there's some primary ingredients that you need to have. You need to be very knowledgeable about the sport that you're coaching, first of all. In other words, you have to be a good X and O man. You have to have a love for the sport. You have to be the type of person that can look at kids and see the talent and then bring the talent out of them. And it takes a special art to be able to do that. When I coached track, I could look at a kid, I could look at the expression on his face, I could look at the body build, I could watch him run and see the potential there. And I think most good coaches can do that. They can see the potential by looking at a kid and listen to him talk and getting something from the personality. Most winners that I've noticed, they have an intense something about their personality. They have the never die attitude. They might be a little bit cocky, saying, hey, I can do that, and you can't stop me. And sometimes those people are not the greatest citizens in the world. And that was a challenge for me, to take a kid that wasn't the greatest citizen, but had all of those qualities that it took to win, and then mold that person into something that, everybody could be proud of, and he can be proud of himself. And I think that our coaches ought to be able to take kids that are just mediocre, sell them on a program, then develop them mentally as well as physically. And that takes a special art to be able to do that. And I look for those qualities in the coaches, and I think that we all, most people that have been around athletics can see that. And people that haven't been around can see that this kid has something special, but they can't put the finger on it. But when you hire coaches, and you've been a player, you've been a coach yourself, I think you need those ingredients to be able to see those qualities, mold it, and be able to motivate that kid. And I think the way you motivate him, you tell him you have to goal set, okay? And you have to tell him where he is at this particular point in time. So you'll say, Johnny, right now you're 6 feet, you're only 170 pounds, and you're a freshman. By the time you're a senior, you might be 190, 195 pounds. You might have grown a couple inches. Right now, you're very weak, so we know you need to lift weights. You need to develop the upper body as well as the lower body. Now, if you're going to be a football player, you need quickness. You need good footwork, and there are certain things that you need to do. Now, right now, this is where you are. By the time you're a senior, we want you to be up here. We know that you have to get on a weight program. We know that you have to do the job in your studies. But there are some things that I want you to do in the off season. Competing in other sports sometimes gives you a competitive edge over kids that don't compete and just go to the weight room. So those coaches that say weight room is the answer to having a better football game, I might want to argue with that. I think competing sometimes means a little bit more than just lifting weights. You want to be strong and you want to be effective, but I think competing sometimes helps out.
Houston,
So,
go ahead. Finish your point.
okay, the point, well, go ahead. I'll let you.
Well, I just wanted to ask you about specialization. I know in your day when you played high school athletics, you were a triple letterman. You really were an outstanding all-around athlete. Seems more and more nowadays you get the specialized athlete, the one that just plays basketball, just plays football, baseball, whatever the case may be.
Right.
What do you attribute that to? What has happened between your days at Elyria High and 1990?
Well, I think that coaches feel that they must specialize more. I think they feel that in football, they feel they must have a strong athlete in order to be able to play against the players. But everybody's lifting weights, so they feel they must have that strong athlete. Back in the old days, some kids lifted weights and some
Your
didn't.
days weren't the old days.
Well, back, let's say 20, 25 years ago. That's a few years now. I don't think you had as many kids lifting weights, and they were still effective. I think the coaches feel that they have to, they have to lift weights in order to be effective.
Does that disappoint you? That you don't get the triple letterman? You don't get the kid that really excels in 3 sports? At least not as much as you did 20,
I'm not
25 years
really
ago.
disappointed. I think what I don't like to see is I don't like to see a coach saying that you have to just play one sport and my sport is it, and don't go off for any other sport. Now that disappoints me. I think a good athlete can help the school in more than one area. I think a good athlete can play 2 sports. I think you can lift some weights and still be effective and still be strong. And I would like to see coaches helping one another out. For instance, a football team is really, really tough when they have the great wrestlers at their middle guard position. And I think wrestling complements the middle guard and linebacker play in football because it's a one-on-one kind of thing, a headhunter kind of instinct that this kid needs, and I think a wrestler have to really go after this guy if he's going to win. So I think those programs are going to complement each other. A football coach ought to love wrestling, okay, and he ought to try to get his players over in the wrestling program. Now, some football coaches don't like to have their kids in the wrestling programs. They'll tell them, you must go to the weight room and lift weights and be strong so that you can go out and be effective. But I think competing in that wrestling sport, working on footwork, working on quickness and mental toughness is every bit as important as lifting those weights. So I think there's somewhat of a trade-off. You need to do those things in another sport. I would like to see most kids participate in more than one sport. Now, 3 sports might be a little much, but 2, I would like to see it.
So you would encourage your athletes here in the city of Lorain definitely play more than one.
Right, and I do encourage that. It doesn't always happen. I'm in my 3rd year now, and I think some things have to be changed around in order to bring that about. I don't think all of our coaches have that same philosophy that I have, but we're working on it. We're talking about it.
Houston, you mentioned one of your goals when you started was the coach's library. Some more goals that you haven't achieved yet or that you're setting to achieve?
Well, that was one of the main ones. When I came in, I didn't set a lot of goals. I would like to bring all of our programs up so that they're right around the top in the Erie Shore Conference. And right now, some of our sports are around the bottom. I'm not going to mention all of the sports, but, I have a lot of pride, and I like to win at everything that I do. I don't like to be a failure. And I think there's a certain thing that you have to do in order to win. You have to communicate well to those that are working under you. You have to share your goals and visions with those people. And we're in a process right now of doing that. I think you also have to have talent. And you have to rely on the community to supply you with talent. But you can take mediocre talent and use your head and your coaching ability and win ball games when you shouldn't if you're doing the proper things. So I'm going to stress using that library. I know what it takes to win, and hopefully we can get our coaches to, do those things that are important to win.
Coaches often don't realize, or I should say fans don't often realize, that it all starts at the bottom, your roots, your base. How are the junior high programs doing?
They're doing pretty well. I'm not 100% satisfied with the junior high program. I'm in my third year, and I'd like to make some changes there. At one time, we had a nice relationship with the Elyria schools. We were in like a small Erie Shore Conference League with Elyria, I think Midview and Vermilion. And because the school systems were on a different timetable, in other words, our kids got out at 3 o'clock, theirs got out at 2, I believe. I think they got out earlier. No, later. They got out later than we did, and they had a problem. I can't recall all of these facts because I wasn't really involved in athletics when that came about. But this is the way the story was told to me. And there was a problem getting the Elyria kids over to Lorain to play the game by 4 o'clock. They were getting here at 5 and 5:30, and it was really taking too long. So there was some problems with the coaches from both sides, from Lorain and from the Elyria side. And then the problem grew to the principals, and they broke off the relationship. So the Elyria schools decided to play themselves, play among themselves, and Vermilion and Midview and Lorain schools, which were 5 in number, decided to play among themselves and included Lorain Catholic. And so we had somewhat of a small league. I'd like to see the Elyria schools play Lorain again and expand, the program, have more games. Instead of playing 10 games, we would play 14, the amount the state allows. I think the competition would be healthy, playing teams outside of our school system. I'd like to, develop that end of it.
It would help a great deal.
The wrestling program at the junior high is doing so-so. I'd like to increase or, get maybe, I don't want to say better coaches, but get some coaches that really have gone to college and are interested in starting out down at the junior high level, bring them up in the junior high program, and then possibly promote them to the high school, have a program along those lines. But of course you get into the LEA agreement that, have certain things that won't allow you to do all of the things that you'd like to do in the program. So you have to work through some of the paperwork and red tape that's associated.
Well, Houston, I'd like to keep on going on with this interview, but unfortunately we ran out of time. It has been super. I've really appreciated it. I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you for appearing on Sports Scene.
All right, Tim.
Thank you.
All right.
And I'd like to thank you for tuning into Sports Scene. Again, it's a new show on WLCS. We hope to bring it to you every week, or at least every other week, where we'll talk to area people involved in athletics in the city of Lorain. Again, many thanks to our first guest, Houston Love, and we'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi, Grandma. How you doing?
Fine, Mark. Can you help me with these?
Oh, sure, Grandma. You remember those skis you wanted to buy me last year?
Yes, but we couldn't afford them at the time.
Well, now I think I can tell you where we might be able to get them.
How's that?
Well, if you vote yes on issue 22, we might be able to swing them because you won't have to pay tax on your Social Security income. In fact, when this issue passes, the Board of Education is not going to ask for renewal on the property tax you pay now. So you'll be saving more money.
Sounds great, Mark, and we can both vote yes on issue 22.
This is WLCS TV 36, Lorain City Schools.